Here's a key insight I want you to remember for the rest of your life about how bias works. The devil sees objectivity and impartiality as evil, as bias, and as disloyalty. By devil, I mean a selfish person. To understand what I mean by devil, go see my episode, What is the Devil? Search for it. So, the devil, and what makes him a devil, is that he will project his own bias onto objective and selfless people. To a devil, the worst possible sin is putting truth above loyalty to himself. And so devils will absolutely gaslight you as you're trying to be objective and impartial. Don't expect people to appreciate or validate your objectivity and impartiality. They will actually do the opposite. See? When you point out the self-biases of other people, they will get deeply offended by it and deeply hurt, and they will lash out at you. So that's why, for example, conservatives perceive calling out evils of the government as disloyalty. Because many conservatives don't want to admit, for example, that the US government commits war crimes. That's why many white supremacists complain about reverse racism. Because when you call out legitimate racism in society, the people who are participating in the racism, they need some defense mechanism. So what they do is they project their own bias back onto you by calling you a reverse racist. White genocide and all this sort of stuff. The Catholic Church perceives critiques of the church as the work of the devil. A scientist will perceive a critique of science and materialism as pseudoscience, mysticism, and anti-science. So I have rendered many critiques of science in the past, and oftentimes people listen to me and they say, oh, well, then Leo must be anti-science. No, I'm not anti-science. I love science. I'm actually a true defender of science. But of course, it's precisely because I am a true defender of science and I'm pointing out the corruptions of science in the same way that if I was pointing out the corruptions of the Catholic Church, I would be demonized for it. Of course. Of course. That's how devilry works. Because the devil is not aware of his own self-bias, he projects it onto you. So, if you have gripes with me about being self-biased, be careful. Watch out. Maybe you're a devil. Maybe you need to look within to find your own biases first before you go complaining about mine. If you are going to become a selfless, conscious, loving, objective, unbiased person, which is the point of this work, you will be attacked. And you will be attacked precisely on the following terms. You will be attacked for being selfish, egotistical, narcissistic, immoral, subjective, biased, unscientific, irrational, disloyal to the human race and to your country, and you will be called evil, and you will be called a devil. So all of the things that you are precisely working to correct within yourself as you're spiritually purifying yourself, you will be called all of those things by other devils who are not doing this work. So just keep that in mind. Be ready for that. I'm telling you all this so you're ready for it. This is what happened with Socrates, with Jesus, with Buddha, with Mahatma Gandhi, with Martin Luther King. It's happening right now with Bernie Sanders, for example. If you seek to significantly uplift society, you will be demonized. This is a general rule of human society and human nature. Because what's involved with uplifting society is undoing selfishness and self-bias. But the ego hates when its self-biases are pointed out. So of course the ego is going to lash out and project because the ego wants to rig the game for its own advantage. So the thing the ego hates the most is those people, those whistleblowers, who point out the rigging of the game that the ego is doing. See, the ego treats this as the worst and greatest threat, the greatest disloyalty. What the ego wants is the ego wants compatriots who are going to be loyal conspirators in this conspiracy of self-deception. And self-bias doesn't just work alone by itself. Self-bias is compounded by conformity. It's very hard to be self-biased all by yourself as an individual. It's much easier when you have a bunch of other people who are as self-biased as you, so that all of us can come together and we can be self-biased as a group. You know, because if I'm viciously racist, it's going to be hard for me to maintain that. But if I can be viciously racist and I can gather a social media group of 10,000 other vicious racists, and then we can come up with a story about how it's the other people who are actually reverse racists against us, then we can convince ourselves that we don't actually have a self-bias. And that turns out to be one of the core functions of human groups, is to normalize self-bias. Because in a group, we can create a story that creates a collective denial of our shameless self-biases. And that's exactly what certain organizations, for example, Fox News, is doing. That is the whole structure of Fox News. The people who work there don't even understand that they're doing this, because they are all surrounded by others who are as self-biased as them. And they're spewing out this propaganda. And the value this propaganda has to people who watch Fox News is that, of course, they themselves are as self-biased as the people on Fox News. And this is a great benefit because it builds a collection of millions of people who can be self-biased together. You can be a devil together. Collective devilry. And as we do this collective devilry, we can convince ourselves that we're actually angels. And that's how the devil really does his work. The devil doesn't do his work individually. The devil does most of his work collectively. Through individuals, collectively.